Yeah, I
change in
think
time?
so.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, we are live. Good morning,
Live and
all.
true.
Welcome
Howdy,
to
Judy.
quarter number 2. Do you know what? This is quite significant, isn't it? That we're now in quarter number 2. The first quarter was quite amazing. Very quickly, I'm going to hop into the FTSE if you don't mind, mate. We've basically been open now for 36 minutes, so we're going to have to change the show time tomorrow. So for anybody listening who's already in the show, I can't check just yet, but let me have a quick look, see how many are in and how many are going to get this memo. Yeah, we're going to have to shift the show to an hour early. Is that going to be all right for you?
For me?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Good.
Yeah, but
Excellent.
better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why not? Absolutely. It gets me right into dinner time. Then I can have dinner with my wife. That's all.
Oh, yeah, well, even better than that. Okay. All right,
But
yes.
of course, then we'll lose daylight saving. When's that? That might be Easter, I think. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's the next couple of weeks, so it'll change again for me.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I suppose we'll get to that as we go. But yeah, so you can see now it's 8:37 UK, which means we've been open for almost 38 minutes now, and we need
Look
to
at
get
that
in.
beautiful bounce on Friday. Wow.
Yeah, it's been pretty amazing, really, the FTSE 100, and further numbers out of China. And I was watching for these. It was Brexit was playing havoc really with the charts over last week. It was playing havoc with the charts, and we really do start to enter into one of the strongest months for the FTSE 100 now. So April does tend to be a pretty bullish month. Now there is still some worries. Can I hear John Wayne in the background?
It kind is. I can't turn my bloody phone off.
Yeah, so we got one of the strongest months coming up, but an odd quarter actually coming up because we have the kind of sell in May, walk away scenario potentially happening. But we probably look for April to continue to push to the upside and maybe come back in May. But there are some recession worries that still hang over the market, so we can get to that in a moment. What I find quite interesting about this FTSE is that there are some levels of resistance, and I think they're almost, but not quite, upon us. Let's bring in a clean chart so the pivots don't distract us from a longer term time frame. So this is what we got on the monthly. Now, the first thing to note is that the monthly is in a downtrend. It's not confirmed because we don't have that lower high, and something similar happened here actually. Well, actually, it wasn't that similar because we did crash the downside, then we did get that lower high, but it soon turned around. It got swallowed up and turned around. But we do have this lower low. So really, I am looking for a bit of a bear market that is on its way, but obviously not quite ready yet. I'm using this weekly trend line to look for a bounce. And what's I think is quite interesting about this weekly trend line is that it will probably give us something of a double top, depending on when it happens, and depending on when it arrives there. So I am going to look for, there's about another 50 pips if it happens this week. But if it happens in subsequent weeks, then obviously that number starts to diminish from the highs. So that will be more like 30. And then, if it takes a month to get up to this point, which it could, we could get some sideways price action, and it could take a month to get up there. But that would suggest that we may well be at a high. Inverted head and shoulders on the weekly chart kind of counteracts that, but we do have this this pretty significant line here. And when we bring this yellow line up, then we see that that line does become even more significant when we see these lows here. There's some resistance from this point here. It became support. Does it become resistance with any kind of substantial price action? We'll see as we go. But I am looking for the price to come down. The question really from here is more about a little gap this morning as well. It's been filled, but there is a little gap this morning, and this we need to watch by Friday because it might actually give us a shooting star. Now, the reason I think this is significant is that we do have data releases this week. So let's talk about what we've had overnight and what's driving the market currently today and what's probably going to drive it for the rest of the week. and we come over to Forex Factory, and we see overnight some really, really good numbers from China. Manufacturing 50.8. And this is significant because we want to look at trends in fundamentals as well. You know, the fundamentals give us a chart, just like anything else. So we can put the technical pattern in here. Huge drop to the downside in February of this year. Kind of got pushed a little bit further back in actually that would be the January number, wouldn't it? When it's reported in February. But this number here, the April number, got reported overnight. The April number is much more positive, so that may well have broken the trend. When we can see that there's it would be a trend line down here. If I had a drawing tool, then I would use it. But that's a break to the back to the upside. So that may well form something. And it's interesting with this stuff because you can actually see that that the manufacturing numbers do trend to a certain degree. You can see that there's a little trend line going along here. When it breaks, it starts to move to the downside. When this breaks, it might start now moving to the upside. But we'll see what happens with manufacturing over time. Since then, we've had some pretty poor numbers out of Germany. Germany final manufacturing PMI, pretty bad. So there's a slowdown there. It doesn't really agree with the manufacturing numbers in China. And we've got some manufacturing numbers out of the UK coming in. Well, they should have happened, actually. They should have happened unless... Yeah, so this clock is wrong. Let's see if that does help. 8:43, there we go. Yeah, so we got that coming out then in that case in around about an hour. So may get some sort of read that might help move the market. But let's really get on to the big numbers for the week. Now we're going to get a significant bit of detail on how the global economy is growing, and are we still in some do we still have these recession fears? Core retail sales is the first indication, so we want to see how the consumer is continuing to behave. Again, just having a look at the charts here, some pretty poor numbers, but that's too choppy to really kind of take too much out of. So we're going to look for the isolated number with that one. ISM manufacturing PMI, another significant number. These manufacturing numbers are very, very important for the state of the economy. Core durable goods orders, again, that's going to be an important number. Now, we're going to have to take these all in one big lump. We can't really just isolate one number, but we're going to take all of these from one big lump. Non-farm payrolls on Friday. So really, this week does give us a glut of numbers. You know, we got a lot of numbers. And because of that, that suggests to me that the upside here is potentially going to be a bit muted until we get the numbers out. Now, obviously, the Chinese manufacturing data has helped. And when we come to the chart this morning, we had this little gap which got pretty closely filled and swept straight away. So we've already had a fairly decent run to the upside, but you know we could be getting to some specific highs today. So I think we might well be looking for some downside in time. As you said, mate, really interesting bounce on Friday, but more, I think, significantly is the move that we've had. You know, that we seem to be having these really over excited and over emotive moves going on in the FTSE right now, and just considering the last 2 weeks of March, we had this move followed by this move, and now followed by this move. So really, really emotive price action, parabolic moves to the upside, parabolic moves to the downside, parabolic moves to the upside. So the suggestion really, if we go on, you know, just a pattern of this particular sort, is that the downside could be quite vicious if it is to arise. But that is going to be triggered by those numbers. And as I say, I would suggest that maybe over the next day or two, we would probably consolidate in this area. Maybe retail sales and some of those other numbers could start to push us further if they're really positive. But we're probably going to be waiting for the unemployment data from the United States on Friday before we get some really confident price action. And if the price action is confident,
is the volatility Brexit, mate? Is that what?
Not anymore. The volatility that we've had has been Brexit related. So
Yep.
this particular move was Brexit related, and this particular move was Brexit related. This move was German manufacturing related. So this was more of a global outlook, which is actually why overnight I was expecting the market to be down again, because I thought maybe the Chinese data would reflect the global economy right now, which is a little bit tentative. And considering we had somewhat of a distribution a pattern seemingly going on here, I thought we might actually start to see a right shoulder along this point here, but that hasn't happened. So Brexit will be back in the 4 today. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Brexit, because yes, Brexit has been moving the FTSE around, because as the pound has weakened, then the FTSE strengthened. But the pound is extraordinarily resilient, considering really all the problems that are going on. You know, coming to the pound now, pound dollar is really just holding along this level here. Great place for a buy down here, but you know, there's going to be a lot of nervous traders that don't really want to take this on. But I would suggest that actually it's still not a bad place, and there's every chance that stops will get taken out, but not gapped. And I think that's always the biggest fear. You know, if you've got a trade that you can take, why not take it? Because the stops will probably get taken out just as regularly as any others, and the biggest problem is if it gaps down, then you potentially lose more than your stop. But I don't see that being the case, and I've got a little trend line here. I've got a higher high going on. Little pullback into this area here would create a pretty decent base. So somewhere in about the 130, 37 area, I think would be a pretty good buy zone for the pound. And I may well take that one on myself. So yeah, looking at the pound, I think it's shown some resilience. We've got Parliament taking control of Brexit again today, taking back control of the Brexit negotiations today, and not negotiations, sorry, the Brexit course today, and looking to decide on what's going to happen next. Now, of course, last time it went to Parliament, they voted no on 8 separate accounts. So you can't really trust them. But in saying that, I think they were probably feeling out where Parliament's position was. So I think that you probably start getting some of those ideas that were close last time through this time. Now, one of those ideas is a customs union that was put through by the father of the house, Ken Clarke. And I think that probably will pass today. So I think that there's probably some appetite for a closer customs union. Second place last time was a second referendum. Whether it's the second referendum on Theresa May's deal or whatever else, it isn't that relevant. But the second referendum may well now get some may well now get some support as well. So we could be looking at a customs union and a second referendum on a specific question by the end of today. But I think we'll probably get something through today. Then we might actually get a little bit of an idea of direction. Now, if either of those
what
two,
happened on
Friday, Theresa May put a deal through again, and it got voted down again. Is she's decreasing the margin every time. So
what number was that?
Well, how much did she lose by?
No, sorry, was that number 4?
No, that was number 3.
Number 3.
That was number 3. So
I'm losing count. So
yeah, so she's talking about a number 4, but that was number 3. What that effectively meant was that April the 12th is now front and center. So if she'd managed to get her deal through, we were looking at May 22nd, I think it was, for the withdrawal agreement. But now we're looking at April 12th. So it's really starting to come forward, which is much better. You don't want to kick down the road and kick down the road and kick down the road. So at least we're going to get something of a decisive move now with the decision. So April the 12th will be either exit date
Can I quote Ash on every news media that we're going to get a decision on April 12th.
Point.
Right?
Good point. Good point. Good point. Yeah. So we probably won't, but you know, at least the date is set out. Well, there'll be something. I don't know what it will be. Actually, it probably won't be a decision, but there'll be something on April the 12th. Something will happen on April the 12th, and it could be something that could be decisive for the pound. And as I say, I think if customs union gets passed today and the second referendum gets passed today, we're probably likely to see pound strength If there's no
All right.
again, then maybe some weakness back in the pound. But
Okay, so that's
yeah.
how. Do we trade it, or do we just wait and
I
guess?
think it's tradable. I think it's tradable.
Yeah.
I really like the pound because I love where it is. You know, this is a really strong level here, and I think if we can get you know, something of a higher low on the hourly, then I think this is more than tradable. And we know how much open water we have. Look at this on the weekly. We know how much open water we have. All it's going to take is a little bit of a push beyond this level, and we could be flying with the pound. So I really like it. Now, whether it's against the dollar, I don't know. It could be against the euro, which again, it seems to be fairly resilient up against the euro as well. We got probably a level along here, which continues to hold. And you know, again, right on a level here. It didn't close above on Friday, so so all the levels are still intact. And do we get a lower high here? Yeah, could be looking for something of a lower high. I probably want to see
Me
this
too.
break the either the lower high is going to come up against this trend line here, which puts us there, which is tradable, or we get something which will actually probably be a little bit cleaner, and we break through this level here, which maybe that looks a little bit more palatable on a 4-hour chart. No, it doesn't actually. You know what? I quite like it on the hourly, and I think pushing up to this level would be something that I would be interested in. So I think the pound is tradable, mate, and I think it's upside from here on in.
Okay. Yeah. Look, it hasn't broken the cycle yet, and I was talking about this last week. The cycle that the pound has been in. So I'm still of that opinion as well. I don't think it's yet a sell, that's for sure. So I'll be looking for upside still. Where I'm going to find it, well, we'll just have to wait and see. But I've got a funny little trend line. You want me to show it to you?
That'd be great.
It's not classic, but it may well be interesting. So I'm on the 4-hour chart, and I've got this little level through here. But let me firstly show you why I think this cycle is still intact, and it's on the daily chart, because we're still getting higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs. We still haven't taken out that low. But what we have done, which is interesting, is we took out that little short-term trend line. But now we've come back above that short-term trend line. And that's interesting for me. And that's very much a case of let's retest it. And maybe we're off on a run onto the upside here, back to this, at least this resistance level. The reason it's not perfect for me is because it's already been violated 2-3 times. But if price reacts off it, it's also got a confluence here with the daily pivot. So what I'd really like to see here is this bar, or probably this bar, or the daily bar. Take out the weekly pivot. So get a close above the weekly pivot on the 4-hour or the daily, then come back and retest that level. That would get me really interested in trading it long. Until then, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. You know, there's a case here for, again, if I go to the daily chart, there's a case here for, you know, we haven't been able to close back above that trend line yet. So if I see a candle similar to that tomorrow, or even worse, a selling bar, kind of takes out what I've just said, and gives me the indication that they will test this low. They haven't done so yet, and as I say, the trend is still intact as far as I'm concerned, and a great place. You know, if there's a better place to get long this, then I'd like to see it. It's a really, really nice entry here if you can find one, and it does go long, of course. So that's why and similar to you, Ash, I think it's a great place. I think it's a good price, and if you can find a way in here, then happy days. But I don't think it's absolute clear cut as I'd like. Well, I don't know as I'd like it to be, but as it may appear.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things that we probably need to wait for for the vote to happen, and that's really what's been going on. The pound, sorry, the FTSE and the pound have been really quite volatile. The pound, I don't know if you watched the price action with a pound on Friday, but the volatility was incredible. To the point that it had broken to the upside. There was a little whisper. So Theresa May, to get her deal through, needed the DUP, which is the party she bribed so she could get into government, and the DUP said that they wouldn't back it, but at one point there was a whisper that they would back it. Now, I'll very, very quickly just show you this because it was fascinating price action. But what we had was this movement to the downside, and then another drop, and then all of a sudden there was a little whisper about the DUP, and price just started to pick up and pick up. But then it kind of got swept away again, and price reacted off the monthly pivot to the downside. But then it was suggested that there wouldn't be a deal with the DUP, and price started to really tank again to the downside. But as I say, I think the fascinating thing was the resilience. You know, it didn't just go and go at that point.
Yep.
We managed to stabilize. People managed to buy back up again, and I think this is indicative of what we have with the markets about buy the rumor, sell the news kind of thing, where ultimately price has gone nowhere because there's no clarity. And I just think it's really interesting when you get no clarity, then you're better off kind of looking for where were we, you know, not where are you likely to go, but yeah, where were we, and we're really back to the start again, which is why we need to wait for the vote, because any idea that they might get the vote through will push price in a direction, but we don't really want to trade that. What we want to trade is the setup, but only when we get the clarity. And if that clarity is in the form of a customs union or a second referendum, then I think we start to see movements to the upside. So we need to wait on the price action. I'll pass you back the screen while I look for times on the vote.
Sure.
No, I don't think Forex Factory are.
I was going to say we're just about to open, but that was an hour ago, of course, with the daylight saving. And I guess she'll just repeat for those of you who weren't in the room at the time that as of tomorrow, we will be reverting back to trading the UK Open. So we'll be in half an hour before the UK session opens, which will be as usual at 0730.
Yeah, and it's going to be 2:30. 2:30 Sing.
2:30 Sing, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Happy days. And that will be 5:30 Australia. And that'll, of course, change when we go out of daylight saving, which I think is either next week or in a couple of weeks. So all over the shop. All right, I'm going to go with the euro. And I don't seem to have the screen here, or do I?
Yeah, I think you do.
Do I?
You do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So euro, interesting, as is always the case with the euro, because it is a very, very fascinating currency pair, and one that, of course, is traded the most. And this continues to trend short, although on Friday you can see that big doji bar there. That pretty much was the case. If it was probably the same on the daily. Well, kind of. It's a bit upside down, though, isn't it? Maybe we're seeing a little turnaround here. I actually don't see that, to be fair. What we have is this level here now holding the market up, but for how long? Look, this continues to look very, very bearish. I would say that we are due a decent retracement, and that retracement maybe should take us back to the weekly pivot, if not the monthly pivot. So if I'm not short here already, which we are, of course, we're still short twice, don't forget. I've still got my stops at entry on both. I don't know that I'm willing to change that until maybe this retracement does come. And if we get off the monthly pivot and go short again, then I would definitely close them up and get them just above the monthly pivot. So at this point in time, am I expecting retracement? Yes. How far? probably to there, but could be here. It could be here. And I'm just not going to do anything. I'm not going to trade the retracement to the best of my knowledge unless I get something that's absolutely compelling. And by that, I mean something like maybe a big double bottom, followed by a significant higher low. But if I'm trading into these areas here without profit, then I probably don't want to do that. But significantly, we've broken this intraday, if you like, trend line, certainly short-term trend line. A retest of that would be interesting, in particular at the confluence area of the daily pivot. That may give the market a little bit of impetus. So, it's not out of the question. If I were to get priced down here and then give me a reversal bar, why not trade it back to the weekly pivot? Small stake because it's high risk, counter momentum definitely. But that would not be something I would dismiss. Time of this, all the action today, Ash. Do we know the time?
I can't find it actually. It's I'm on the right article, but maybe it could be a bit further down where it says it. But it is today.
So that does make it a little trickier, of course.
Yeah.
As I said, you'd probably be wanting to wait until that news happens. But if the news does happen and we don't get too far away from here, or if we get to the weekly pivot, come back and then get the higher low, I think that's probably the best case scenario, actually. If we got price up to here, then fall off it, come back to the daily pivot, give us the higher low, then we can trade it through to the monthly pivot. I think that wouldn't be such a bad idea. So I'm in for that one if it does set up, but caveat is I think the news has to happen first.
Yeah.
So we'll wait on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that should pretty much be the rule of thumb. You've got to let the news pass, because as soon as you anticipate the news, you're in all sorts of trouble. Well, you can be. I know. See, I like your trade. Your trade where you put in both orders. That's a bit different, isn't it?
Yeah, the breakout. Yeah,
the breakout. Yeah, I really like that. But if you don't have both positions and you just kind of speculate on one direction, you can be in all sorts of trouble.
Yeah, you've just got to get really lucky at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's
I mean, say you do on both of the breakouts also, but generally when you've got a number or a decision or a single bipolar or well, I'll call it bipolar, but it could be, it's a binary situation where it's going to go one way or the other. Unlike if, for instance, you've got the Australian interest rates, you've got those tomorrow. That will likely lead a candle that goes in one direction, unless it's a crazy number. Then you've got the budget release on the Aussie the same day, but a few hours later. So that's the one that could just move the market all over the place. You'll get whipsaws happening each and every direction, because what will happen is the Treasurer will say, we're going to give everybody $100,000. And then he'll say, and then we're going to take back $150,000, in the next sentence. And the market just reacts in kind to all those sorts of things. So there's not a great way, in my opinion, to trade news that is not based on a number or a single, as I say, binary situation, as is maybe an interest rate announcement or a GDP figure or retail sales figure or housing, whatever. It's much tougher to trade those statements that we must suffer, of course, day in, day out throughout the year. So with the Aussie, what have I got? I've got a bullish engulfing bar. I've probably got a left shoulder, head, right shoulder. But really what I've still got is lower high, lower low. Sorry, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high on the monthly pivot. The thing that does surprise me, and this goes into what Ash was saying before, if it hasn't done that, if it really hasn't bounced off the monthly pivot, which it has,
sorry, we got no visual with your screen.
Oh, why is it so? Let me try again.
There we go.
Is that good? Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So as I was saying, we've probably got, this is the daily chart. I wonder what it looks like on the weekly, actually. Yeah, kind of the same. It's kind of a left shoulder, head, right shoulder situation. But what chart was I on? Daily, I think. Daily, there we go. I'll get there. So we've really got a situation where we've got lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, significant lower high, because we've had a double rejection of the monthly pivot. Now, that normally would get me interested short, and it did. As you can see, I traded this short and only got, I can't remember what I got out of this, only a TP1, I think. Yeah, that's right, a TP1, and then we got our trailing stop hit. But we've rejected the monthly pivot for a second time, and again, we haven't been able to drive through the support. Now we're having, it would seem, another attempt to go long here on the back of perhaps bullish engulfing bar and a series of higher lows. This is really, really tough for me. I can't explain to you any more than I have that this should have gone short here because of the trend that was inside this little box here. And it didn't even hit the bottom of the range. That kind of stuns me when that happens. And I think then, hang on a minute, if that hasn't done that, something else is going on. And that something else could well drive this, back to here somewhere. It may be US related. It may be China related. It could be anything. But to me, there's something going on here that doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense to me that this market did not go and challenge this low here or even this low here. Doesn't make sense. And when that happens, as I say, I think there's something else going on. And I think we're probably headed in this direction. We will see. Certainly the gap in the market this morning would suggest that's the case. But I'm not going to jump into the market here long, that's for sure. What I would like to see, however, is maybe, I don't know what I'd like to say, to be fair, maybe come back down here and give me this support level again, get back above the then broken trend line, retest it from above. There would be a confluence with the daily pivot sitting there as well. So I'm thinking bounce off here, work our way down to here, break this, find the support, get back above it, retest it there, then look for the long. Gee whiz, have I got us into Wednesday yet? Maybe I have. We're looking for something a little quicker than that. Righto, let me give you this one then. Let's go long here then. Let's break this trend line and then find resistance in, let's say, WR1 or the monthly pivot again, but don't take this high out. We don't want to take.
Oh, we lost you, mate. We've lost Jeff. I'm not sure why. Let's see if I can pick up some bits and pieces now. We can also quickly talk about, while we are waiting for Jeff, any setups. Now the FTSE's just hit a high. Now I'd want this to develop a little bit up here. Let me take the screen. He's going to reboot. Okay, that's okay, because I'm in control. Oh, hold on. You guys hear me okay? I seem to have a problem with this as well. There we go. No, I think you should be able to hear me okay. Okay, so FTSE's hit this area up here, a huge extension up here. This is a definite scalper's paradise in some respects. We've hit a bit of a level of resistance now. It could pop up a little bit higher, but you can see actually there's probably at least It's probably a 1-to-1 to this this particular level before we hit a point of potential support. Overextended bar would suggest that we could see some downside, but when we look at these overextended bars, what happens is one here, comes straight back down again. There's one here, comes straight back down again. One here, comes straight back down again. So the suggestion would be at least that it would come down. What I'd really want to see if I was going to be trading this short at this particular level is for it to come down and move up and again fail. So if it kind of if it hits this this level and starts to bash its head against this point, then I would trade the double top. I'll be happy to trade that. So I think there is some downside room, and the downside target would probably be this this weekly pivot. But there does look to be a few different points down here. Very, very close, these pivots right now. Daily pivot will potentially hold it up the first time round. Monthly pivot will hold it up the second time round. And I'd really want to look for the weekly pivot to be my area that I'd want to go long, if you like. And if I was taking a short, if I get the short up here, then I'd want to take profit at that particular level. So I'm looking at the weekly pivot as a potential spot. I'm going to whack a fib on it as well. I'm going to whack a couple of fibs on this. Firstly, the move, which doesn't suggest anything. Secondly,
back, mate?
Yeah, there you are, buddy. There you are.
Okay, cool.
These highs from last week are significant, and that could take a little while. You go ahead. I was just literally holding a fort. Look at that. Actually, the monthly pivot looks a lot more significant now. So it looks like the monthly pivot could be a potential place for upside. Yeah, you go ahead, mate. I was just having a quick look at the FTSE while you were off.
Right, while I recovered, whatever.
Well, you recovered,
God
yeah.
knows. Okay, with any luck, you've got me back. So I was talking about the Aussie. I'm not sure how far in. Oh, yeah, I do. I remember it just went black. So I was talking about best case scenarios here. Not necessarily what I think will happen, but best case scenarios. Best case scenario right now is for this to break, this trend line to break, and we find resistance somewhere here, or even last week's these last weeks. It's also last month's monthly pivot. But we really don't want to take this high out. If we take this high out, we may well have missed the boat on this. So what I'd like to see happen is maybe here, WR1, which is around about the 71.40 level, around about there. If we could find a lower high based on this, then that would probably get me interested in a short, but I wouldn't take it just then. What I'd like to see is this break again, this trend line I'm talking about, then be retested from below. Then I could look to trade it short down to here, but I would only be trading it short so I could find a better price to get long. Hope that makes sense. And the reason I want to get long is, just as I said before, if this didn't drive price down to here, then I believe something else is going on. And that something else could well drive price back to this area here. So I'm looking for a better price, if you like, to get long the Aussie at this point in time. So hopefully that will manifest at some stage. Because you can see really on the shorter time frames, if you like, this has still got a bullish outlook about it. Yes, this was a lower high based on this. That was an emotive move, of course, but generally there's still a bit of bullishness around about this currency. So I want to find a way in. That's what I'm saying. Cable we've spoken about. I don't have anything really to add on that. We've talked about the fact that we're still trending long, and we've also talked about the fact that we haven't yet closed back above this broken trend line. So there's a little bit going on here more than maybe meets the eye on some charts, but I think probably after the vote, as we spoke about, is probably the way to go there. Now, dollar yen, traded this on Thursday, was it? Yes, it was Thursday in the morning show. I'm not sure if this got through to Thursday evening show. Maybe it did. And got long here based on what I consider to be a pretty clear false break of this trend line here. So we broke it, got underneath it, got back above it, and retested it, and even put in a little bit of a reversal bar there across the monthly pivot and the weekly pivot.
What do you think about that now, mate? The Jolly Yen. I find I was just looking at the Jolly Yen, and I think it's quite an interesting chart because it's very much in agreement with what's going on with the FTSE, with a little gap up today, off the back of that Chinese data. But it looks like a point of resistance, and I'm wondering whether
it's bang on the trend line, no question about that.
Yeah.
Hasn't, well, it probably has hit that trend line. For some reason that's drifted. So it has rejected that trend line straight away. But you know, this is a weird one, and I hate gaps for this reason. You can see what price has done. It has rallied.
Looks like we lost him again. Let's pick up dollar yen again, because we have lost Jeff. So I'm just going to bring this in here, because I was looking at this dollar yen, and I find it quite interesting. Let's bring it over. I find it quite interesting that that it looks very similar in some respects to the FTSE daily chart. Let's bring this on a clean. Well, we get this gap here. Now, again, the gap's been closed, so that in itself isn't a problem. And you have to kind of understand what gaps are. There's two different types of gaps. There's a few different types of gaps, but there's two different types of gaps that are tradable, if you like. There's the gap and go, which is bullish, and there's the exhaustion gap, which is inevitably bearish. Now, you will see them at different points in the market, but this so far has turned into a gap and go, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's going to happen. I mean, when we look at the hourly, this is the gap. This is the gap up, and price came all the way back down. In actual fact, it hasn't closed the gap. There's a little bit of a gap still there, so that's going to have to get closed. Now, if that gap is to get closed in the next few sessions, it will get closed eventually, obviously, then it's going to break this trend line here. So that suggests that we actually could be looking at an exhaustion gap. And the exhaustion gap is when the final orders, if you like, kind of get pushed through. There's that last kind of flurry of overconfidence, and then we see the market come down significantly. This isn't a huge gap, so we may not be able to read too much into this. You know, as you can see, that the gap is really on an hourly chart, which means it's only relevant hour over hour over hour rather than day over day over day. You know, if we look at what would be a much better example of a gap on the dailies, then this would be one here. You know, price closed at this point and it gapped all the way down here, and that particular gap became a support gap. So the gap did provide some support down here. When it came back down here again, you see the price closed here. Sorry, price opened at this particular point, and that was exactly where the gap managed to find some support. So there's different ways that you have to treat a gap, but it's much better to see it on a daily chart. Another example: price comes down here, it gaps up again, and that particular gap was an exhaustion gap. It's at the top end of a trend. Not absolutely, but it's at the top end of a trend. When you see that there's a little breakout here, and it's, you know, it's not easy ever to know exactly what kind of gap you have until it really unfolds. You do need to see a session or two, or maybe come down a time frame, just to see what kind of detail you have before knowing what you have, knowing what kind of gap it is. But this particular gap's in a bit of a strange place, except for it could be along this this right shoulder here. So there's just some resistance along here and here. Looked like the gap, looked like the price action just closed above that area. So a little bit tricky to read that one. Not a gap that I particularly like, but let's just go back and look at a few more.
I'm here.
You're back. Okay, mate. Another exhaustion gap there.
Getting chucked out. I must be swearing or something. Am I?
Yeah, I don't know. Somebody's monitoring you. No, we're just having a quick chat on about gaps and the different ways that they are They are seen. Interestingly, really, you know, when we see these gaps, they actually do provide us with a bar in the end of it anyway. So let's see what kind of bar we end up with today to see how significant this particular gap is. Because again, it could end up being an exhaustion gap, but it wouldn't look like that if we get a bar that ends up looking like this. Now, what's going to drive the price down today is back to the Forex Factory. Are going to be things like, oh, where's my thing gone? Here we go. Yeah, driving the price down today are things like retail sales and manufacturing. So there's enough data today to suggest that that we're going to get more clarity on this before it eventually gives us a true signal. But right now, we just got to wait. Certainly, before that data comes out, I'll be very surprised if this does continue so strongly to the upside, and I think we're probably going to get an easing to the downside. But the point is, after 3 o'clock UK, does that become a support line, or does that become an exhaustion line, and we start to drift to the downside? So lots to see it unfold. Back to you, mate, on the yen, because I'm interested to get your thoughts on that actually.
Which one, mate? Which part
Oh,
of
on
the
the
yen?
dollar yen, we were just
Dollar
talking
yen,
about,
yep.
yeah, and you were just saying about the fact that you hate gaps, but you're also making another side point on it as well.
Yep, sure. Look, this is dollar yen. This is the weekly chart, and I've gone out the weekly chart for a reason, and the reason is that in the weekly chart, really, we've been in a big range. Let me put that in for those who can't see it. You could start just about anywhere, but let's start here, and we'll use that blue line that I've got on my chart because that's pretty much where it's at. So we've had 1, 2, 3 false breakouts to the low side, really nothing to the high side. Where are we currently is obviously the one that we need to know about. And I've got two different scenarios here. The first is, this is a massive rejection bar, massive. And although it is a bearish bar, it's also a massive rejection bar of this level without any shadow of a doubt. And it's backed up by a bullish engulfing bar here. And that is a massive bull signal as far as I'm concerned. So we've got a rally off it. But a rally to where? That is the question that I ask myself. There's a little intraday level well, I won't call it intraday. It's a little bit bigger than that. It's an intermediate level through here. But it's certainly not as strong as this level. And it's certainly not as strong as this level. So why wouldn't we be challenging that is the question in my mind after a test and rejection, if you like, of the monthly pivot. But that's also something that gets me really excited when I see that. I call it a double cross. And to me, that's a signal that if price is weak at all, it's going to smash through here and go short, at least to this level. But it's not a prediction. It's only a cause and effect thing. So I really can't predict what's going to happen here. Not that I can ever really do any predictions with any sort of certainty. But I can see a case for both. I can see a case of big reject here, big backup of this bullish engulfing bar, and a higher low. That
Yeah.
to me says
It's going to be those numbers,
long.
isn't it, mate? It's going to be those numbers.
That's
going to determine which direction we're going to go in here.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing, isn't it? It's the same story. We've got to wait because really we're guessing.
Yeah.
I'm no longer in the long, mind you. When I came to Friday, and I knew I wasn't going to be trading Friday, basically, I thought, okay, this is starting to retrace. I'm out of here. So I'm out of that trade. Sorry, it was all in this mess here. And I've got no interest in it in terms of money-wise. But I do see this nice rejection bar on the trend line. It's at DR2. So there's no way I'd be trading this intraday long. I can promise you that.
Yeah.
But This candle here, the one that's forming now on the 4-hour chart with half an hour to go, really does start to interest me. This is a tradable short, I would have thought. Let me see what that looks like on the hourly. Yeah, it's not quite there. Certainly there's a nice reversal bar, but that's not what I trade, not how I trade. I'd really like to see this level break, I must confess, and then hit the resistance level again, get back underneath it, then retest it. That would make me confident to go short. But I'm not until that happens. So I can see these pivots. They're like the slips in cricket. There's first slip, or that might be the wicket keeper. There's first slip, there's second slip.
Yeah.
They're just waiting for this to happen. As far as they're waiting for someone to nick the ball and, and get through to here. So that's kind of what I'm seeing here. They're the three wise men. You call them whatever you want to call them, but they're sitting there.
Yeah.
Like, they're really poised to catch this market. There's no question in my mind. But yeah, you got to wait for the numbers, I think.
Yeah. It's the only way, isn't it? You're constantly waiting for numbers and then making decisions. That's really the rules of the game, isn't it?
Yep, and again, I can make a case for both. I can make a case for higher lows and higher highs, and I can make a case for a bounce off the monthly pivot. I can make a case for a bounce off the resistance trend line. There's just too much uncertainty there. Aussie yen's not dissimilar, but it is better. It's better because it's at the top of the range here, and this will give me a clear indication as to what happens next. If this were to break through here and take out these highs, you might think I'd get interested in trading this long, but nothing could be further from the truth. I'd much rather see this hit these highs, take them out by maybe 10, 20 pips, something like that, then look for a reversal, because that would give me something that I really like to trade. 3 false breaks in a row, each higher than the other, is a very good, strong bearish signal, in my humble opinion. But again, tricky because we are getting, lower highs and higher lows. So it's all over the place. It's also straddling your last monthly pivot, hasn't been able to get away from that at all during the month, which brings me back to this range. And if we can break through here, get back inside the range, give me a lower high, that's really where I want to get in. So that will be plan A on Aussie yen. Don't know about tomorrow with the interest rate announcement, that's going to be a bugbear in any way, shape, or form, because as always, sorry, not as always, as in recent times, the Aussie or RBA statement has been a dovish statement every single time. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. In fact, it's probably going to be as dovish as ever. And that's why I think if we can get through here today and set up short, then this would be a pretty good trade to take. That's the daily chart, of course, and I can't see that happening on the daily chart, but it could easily happen on the smaller time frame. So I'll be watching that with interest. Good Lord, it's exactly the same chart, isn't it, as a few others. You're getting with the gap and the high test bar, it's low test bar, high test bar, very, very difficult to trade.
Yeah. Geez, God, that's another impressive gap, isn't it? And the Aussie yen being known as the proxy for the market, I think, for the stock market, but being told that this is the best currency pair to kind of look at for stock market, which I completely understand. Aussie being a kind of commodity-based bullish growth kind of industry and or currency, and obviously the yen being a protective currency, that would make complete sense. But you're absolutely right. That gap they're all over the place, aren't they?
It is all over the
I
place.
mean,
Look, if
those
I'm a
Chinese
scalper,
numbers.
I'm going long here, but I can't possibly go long here. Sorry, mate.
Those Chinese numbers. I mean, they're not that impressive.
Yeah, it tends to move the Aussie about, though. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
If China sneezes, we catch cold. That's a fact.
When you sort of think that, 2010 we were looking at 57.4, that was just huge growth in the market in 2010, and it's kind of been waning ever since that point. They've been up and down and up and down, but today's number was, yeah, it was okay. I mean, it's 50.8, just better than a little better than contraction, but less than a point better than contraction. So I think there's been a shade of an overreaction here. Obviously, the numbers from the United States are going to be the real driver.
Yep. Well, I think we're pretty much in that state, aren't we? We're in a place where we just need to wait and see how that goes. But I do like the fact that we're getting, or I'm getting, a lot of breaks near the resistance levels, and they're going to prove to me whether this market is going to go long or short.
Yeah,
and that's pretty cool.
yeah,
So as I go into the week, I've got some good places to start. And if this level here breaks and gets retested, I'm probably a bull here. But if it doesn't and gets back into this area, I'm a bear. And that's very much the case on a lot of these crosses as we come into and out of these ranges. I'm pretty pumped what I'm seeing. Actually, I think it's really cool.
yeah.
We're getting right to the top and bottom of these ranges, and makes me more than happy. There's one there to start with. We've come straight back in. We have bounced off it, but if we get back in again, then away we go. If we take out this high, then I'm a bull very quickly. So yeah, there's pretty clear pictures here for me that are going to unfold as the week does. But
Yeah.
I'm not really that interested in getting in the market at the moment. I would like to see the euro get up to these levels here, and then there's probably another opportunity to get back into it short. Same could be said of a few others. So that's kind of where I'm at. Looking at nice pictures coming up, and I hope by tomorrow they'll probably unfold it a little bit as the numbers come out today.
Okay, mate. All right. Well, you get yourself off and running. We just had manufacturing PMI from the UK, which is pretty stellar. So we might well see a little bit of a pound positive off the back of that. Maybe some footsie weakness, but not anything significant. But you get going, mate, and I will wrap up in a in a little while.
Yeah. All right, man. Thank you for that, guys. Catch you tomorrow, and have a great day.
Yeah, so just to reiterate as well, we're in tomorrow, and now earlier 2:30 Sing will be in tomorrow. But yeah, have a good evening, buddy, and we'll speak to you later on. You're in a bit, aren't you?
Yeah, I will be.
What time will
for a
that
very,
be?
very brief time. Well, I'm assuming
if it's now 9:30 UK, what does that give us? I'll get confused.
your answer's coming. It's usual tonight, which to you would be an hour later. Is that
Which
or
is,
an hour? Hang on. It would be. Yeah, I think I'll leave you to work that out, mate.
Is it in an hour or 2 hours?
It's in 1 hour and 1 hour from now.
1 hour from now. Okay, cool. All right, that's good. All right, dude. I will see you tomorrow.
No, you'll see me then.
I will see you then. Of course I will. All right, dude. See you then. See you in an hour. All right, mate. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Okay, so let's just have a quick check on the pound, and we'll have a quick check on the manufacturing PMI. Manufacturing PMI coming at 55.1. That's a cracking number, really. Again, looking at the chart, looks like it's broken a little bit of a trend to the downside. I can't read too much about these trends because they're not ways to trade necessarily, but that's a really good number. Now let's look at the manufacturing PMI's level of diffusion base. Above 50 indicates expansion in the industry. So it looks like that industry is expanding, and with the pound being weak as it is, manufacturing should actually do pretty well. So let's have a quick look at how that's affected the pound. And when we look at this on the 15-minute chart, then we see an initial reaction and then push to the downside. I think it's really important that we get used to this stuff, to know what's significant, because when it comes down to it, it's the news that creates the moves. We are technical analysts, and the technical situation or the technical picture will give us the price, but the fundamental data will or should give us the bias of our direction, our directional bias, if you like. Now, obviously, you need to know what's the trumping number of the day, because what can happen is you will get a reaction over something like UK manufacturing PMI, and then things can reverse because it's a significant number. But only if it's the only number of the day. It's not that significant, is the point. You know, we're really looking at other numbers today for a driver, and most significantly will probably be again, sadly, Brexit votes rather than any numbers. So we can't read too much into it, but what that does suggest is that the pound at this particular stage is unlikely to turn into a negative market, because all these numbers are being watched by the big guns for the decision that they need to make on what to do next with interest rates. You know, that's what it always comes down to. So let's see if we can dig a little bit deeper into these numbers and see what it tells us. Now, don't be fooled by the move here, because what's likely to happen is, as long as the market hasn't moved on to the next specific announcement, this is likely to rally if it comes back down to this point, unless it closes down in the next 5 minutes, which is fairly unlikely. So let's just have a quick look on the 5-minute chart here. Yeah, you can see that and it's worth analyzing this because it's a shorter term time frame, and we can learn a lot from just looking at charts. So there's the breakout level. This is the point it's likely to spring against the upside. Let's just bring this onto a chart with pivots. Interesting, it stopped the weekly pivot. So I'd be looking at this for a bounce here. And what will be the point would be, if it can just drag itself back up again, can it get through next time? Because if it doesn't get through next time, that would suggest that we're likely to start getting a drift to the downside. Now, of course, if it doesn't pop forward, that would suggest that the next number's already in focus, and the next number's really significantly the US retail sales. So watch the pounds, watch what happens. My anticipation would be we bounce here one more time, back up to the weekly pivot, and then after that we get some decisions being made. But that may not happen. So we have that. Now I am going to bring in to have a look at how that has been reported. And see if that does have any significance. Just going to have a look at news. No, okay. So that doesn't look like it has any significance for the bank. The issue is really for anything to do with the pound is that these numbers don't really they can't really shape what the Bank of England is likely to do, because it's so Brexit heavy right now, so Brexit related. So here comes the bounce, and as I say, what we want to know is, can it break the weekly pivot? The anticipation would be that it would get there. As I say, it may not. Oh, there's always a coin toss here, but with the numbers as they've just been, and it was a stellar number, that would suggest that we would drag back up to this weekly pivot one more time, and then see whether it's going to be enough to take that through. Obviously, just one manufacturing number doesn't really shape what the Bank of England is going to do next, but it can help, because they need some sort of picture to make a decision off the back of. Now I'm looking around for I'm looking around to see whether there are any daily wave riders, because I know everybody would have learned the daily wave rider to start with, and the daily wave rider has been pretty sparse, isn't it, for opportunities. Now, I don't know if anybody's got any that they want to look at, but I see none. I certainly don't see any that I'm that comfortable with. I'm just looking through the pound crosses now. And this is the problem, you see. We haven't really had a trending market recently, and this is really indicative of a market which is just changing direction, or at least, when I say changing direction, I think of a pause as a change of direction, as well as a complete reversal. WTI continues to push to the upside, so nothing is dragging that down. I've got to look at copper as well for a indication of market sentiment. So far unable to break through this area here. Another gap with copper as well. So, you know, more indications that the market is getting extremely excited now. Whether that's overexcited or not, we still do not know. But we know that the market is getting very, very excited right now, and we need to be aware of where we are when it comes down to phase. Bitcoin, I've noticed, has broken through the 4,000 level. So let's have a quick look at Bitcoin. Yeah, you see this level here is significant. It takes this area out here. That is going to suggest some upside for Bitcoin. Looks like a level of resistance along here. Now I'm not sure if it's there or there. Probably is around about there, because we have a touch here, and a touch here. So it's broken through this particular point. Let's put it to the highs though, because that would be in agreement with the break of this trend line. But watch out for Bitcoin, because if this can break through and reverse, then and pull back, that is going to be a buy zone. And it looks to me that there could be a few along here. Four, three, 4 5s. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to be that strong, but it is something there, isn't there? There's our level here. Something up to around about that point. Maybe up to 5,000. So that's really where I'll be looking at Bitcoin. It looks like it's created some sort of bottoming pattern down here. Whether this is the absolute low is hard to say, but it certainly looks at this stage that it's created something of at least a short-term low. So we'll see what gives there. Quickly back to the pound. Let's bring these pivots back in. There you go. And of course, it could just fail at these highs here, but the scalpers will be looking for the weekly pivot. Got a really nice bar here as well. Pretty good 2-to-1 little trade there if they can get that if they can get the pound back up to the weekly pivot. Well, maybe it's not going to go. Let's just have a look at the 15. Yeah, you see this bar here is suggesting that the weekly pivot will provide some further resistance. I want to check a line along here as well. Yeah, even if it breaks through the weekly pivot, it's got some issues. The pound, which is no big deal, because actually in the medium term, we're probably looking for some retracement anyway. Maybe even into the news and data from the United States, we could see the pound reverse as we see the dollar pushing higher, the markets pushing higher. Get the numbers out, and then maybe that's the point that we start to push back to the lows there. But the significant thing is definitely this line. Now, I just want to reiterate this point a little bit. Oh, CAD yen, yeah. Oh, sorry, buddy, you're still stuck on Jeff's screen, are you? Okay. Okay, here we go. Have you missed all the analysis of the pound? Let's go back then. So the pound we are looking at, and as I say, I think it's really important that we discuss this, because we've just had manufacturing numbers out. Now, the bar on the pound that the scalpers will look for is this one here. And forget the scalpers. Let's just talk about the market makers. Market makers aren't looking for huge moves. They're quite happy to trade this in small little increments, and they'll be looking at this bar here with a buy at the high. They're not having to pay spreads, so they can quite happily scalp away and just look at the markets as a zero-sum game, if you like. They can just enter where the breakouts are and have stops where the lows are. They'll be looking at the higher the bar, looking for stops to the lower bar. The target will be up here. So when you measure the bar there, it's around about 6 pips. The target is going to be around about 14. So they're looking at around about a 2-to-1 back up to the weekly pivot. Then after that, it's possible that that it starts to stretch its legs a little bit, but not too far beyond here. So if it does pop up and beyond this particular bar, there is a suggestion that will probably start to weaken along this particular trend line. The 15-minute bar here does not fill me with too much confidence that this is going too much further, which is why I would suggest that the weekly pivot, or this trend line, or both, if it's a little bit later that it arrives at the weekly pivot, will provide the resistance. Now, this is significant because we just want to analyze trends, really. And if we're going to analyze a trend, there's no better chart, not that we're going to trade off it, but there's no better chart than to analyze off a shorter term time frame, because the shorter term time frames obviously give us more trends to analyze. Now, the movement here is this point here. Now that's it's not the best, but it does have 3 touches. These two are a little bit close, but it does have 3 touches. That's all we're really looking for. 3 touches. Closes a little bit below, but that's not a huge issue. This one closes above, and that's what gives us the signal. So now you want to start imagining what this looks like on a daily chart, and you can see that you do have areas that you can trade. So the trend analysis with the pound would be, no matter the time frame. This is a 5-minute chart, so the trend analysis off a 5-minute time frame is that this is going higher as this pulls back here. We get the breakout and we get the back test. Not a great breakout, to be fair, because this does actually cause some resistance, which is why the profit taken in this point is going to be prevalent. Now let me just see whether, yeah, I mean that would provide an even money break there. So you can see that there was a little bit of profit taken there, and market makers would have been quite happy just to kind of halve their risk at that point. And then if it breaks through that point, they've got to break even. But they're obviously looking for specific highs here. Now I'm just going to drag this down at this point. Yeah, you can see this isn't so good. It's not too bad. But the issue with this one is that this would have been before news. So now after news, you can see that there's still opportunities here. Yeah, there's a little bit of profit taking, because what happened is that this 5-minute bar did not close above this high. So there's a bit of profit taking here. But the overall takeaway here is that this trade is now safe for any of those scalpers or market makers, because, you know, with stops at that point, if it comes and takes them out, they've already made an even money between that point and that point. So so if it was to reverse here, it wouldn't be that surprising. So from here on in, we want to see whether this can come back down to this point here. Let's change the time frame. We want to see if it's going to come down to this point here. Now this becomes even more prevalent. Now it's possible that the daily pivot is enough to hold it up, and that will be the point that I would suggest that there are orders. So somewhere around about the 1.3046 or 1.3050 is the point that you want to put an alarm on your chart, because if it comes down here and holds, then it takes off. Now let's talk about the hold, and we'll go back to the 5-minute chart again. So what we saw was a break, a retest, and a hold. So the hold is really important, which is why when you do the daily wave rider, for example, you get the master candle. The master candle is the hold. You know, that suggests that that the preceding winners of the battle are back in control. Suggests that they are. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are, but it suggests that they're back in control. So what we're going to want to see here is now we've had the breakout on this hourly breakthrough. We haven't had a test of the area it broke out of, and it might not get there, but if it does, I'd want to see this hold, and if it does, then there are trades to the upside. Now, this trend line would suggest, what time is it now on this? 11 to 12, 9 to 10, so it's 2 hours. 3 o'clock UK, which is interesting because the 3 o'clock UK is the 3 o'clock UK is the release of the US data. So that is where we are. That is where we are. That is where we currently reside. Now, I'm going to look at that wave rider really quickly, and then shut up shop for the day. So you're looking at the CAD yen, and I don't want to know which direction just yet. Let me analyze it first. Well, obviously there's a short with the monthly pivot, but let's bring this into longer term time frames. Let's see what we have. Geez, there's a lot of these gaps. So there's certainly a short would be the direction that I'd be looking at. Let me just check what the Yeah, so this is a short for sure. No long. There's no long setup here at all. It would have to break through here, probably take out these highs as well, and then you could start looking for the long. But right now, this is a short-looking market. Now that's not a particularly good line. Let me just see what else we got. Yeah. That's the line there that it broke through. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, look at these as well. Look at the on the 4-hour chart. I think this is quite telling that we get this. We get the gap up. We get this hanging man. We get a shooting star. We get well. We don't really know what's going to happen with this hourly bar, but that it may well start to come down from this point anyway. So I will now ask you what direction you're looking in. You still there, mate? What direction are you looking in here, Pedro? Long or short? I'm hoping you're going to say short. Awesome. Oh, you're in. You are in. Nice work. Okay, so now let me see if what time frame are you trading this on? Is this on the 4-hour? Nice. 4-hour chart after the red high test bar. Beautiful. Okay. So you are in a short, and you're effectively short down here with a lot. That is a beautiful trade, mate. That is a great trade. I love that trade. You've got so much room. Now, the big thing here is be patient. Now, I don't know what your plan is. Have you got a plan for your exit strategy? Well, let's talk about exit strategy with this one. It's going to have to come down pretty fast, isn't it? Let me just take the. Oh, nice. Where's your target? Okay, here's the plan. This will be my plan. Now, leave stops where they are, obviously. Now, I hope your stops are just above these this monthly pivot here. I don't know, 5 or 6 pips above that point. Now, the likelihood here is daily pivot. Okay, that is screaming as a level, as a take profit area. Now, if you want to take the trade safe, there's no reason not to try and make the trade safe on the gap, because that would give you, it's going to give you around about a break-even trade from that point. The only problem with that is that the daily pivot will be probably your closed trade. So you've got 2 options. Option 1 is to take profit half off at the gap, which is around about call it 83. So you got half off at the gap, and then you are going to leave the rest of the trade, leave the stop exactly where it is, leave the rest of the trade on, and take the full profit at the daily pivot. It's going to be a little conservative, but it's going to be around about the daily pivot. You could let it go to the weekly pivot, but I think you are stepping into a little bit of a danger zone. So half off here, half off at the daily pivot. The daily pivot is currently sitting around about 82. Wow. It's going to be around 82.80. I mean, this low here may hold it up before it reaches that daily pivot. So you're going to have to watch out for that. And I wouldn't really want to lose a couple of pips just because I've been waiting for the daily pivot. So I'd probably be coming out around about 82.80. So you got 8300, 82.80 for the second trade. That's option 1. Option 2 is to ignore this level completely. Slightly more aggressive, but if you are confident with this market, then option 2 is a much better trade and much more lucrative trade. So option 2 is to ignore this level completely. Now, I have to say, if it was me, I would be going for option 2. I'd ignore this level completely. So it's not to say that that's what you should do, but that's what I would do because I am a bit more aggressive, and I'd want to try and squeeze as much out of this. So I'd want to take profit here. I wouldn't take half off. I would want to take profit here. And at that point, I'd probably take 3/4 off. And I'd probably be sort of like looking, if there was what I'd really love to see is it come down here. if I was trading this, I'd want to see it come down here. I'd want to see it bounce. Then I'd want to see it create the lower high there, come down to that point, take profit there. Then I'd move stops on the second half to near break even, whatever the high was, if it came down to this point. But it's going to be near break even. I'd want to move my stops to close there, and not half. I'd want to probably take 3/4 off there. And with the other quarter, just ride it. Ride it until you get that change in sentiment on the hourly chart would be my particular preference. So if I saw a higher low on the hourly, or I saw a double bottom on the hourly, then I would look to take the second portion of the trade. So they are the two ways that I would look at trading. There's obviously many more, but they would be the two options that I would look at. That's the way that I would want to try and trade this. So let the bounce happen. You're going to have to sit through it and recognize that if it goes back up again, you could have taken profit here. But if it does bounce and bounce again, then you're going to be in for a much more lucrative trade. So and obviously that does look like a head and shoulders pattern as well if that does happen. So that would be my play, mate. Obviously, if it comes all the way back down to this point here, then you don't even have to worry about the bounce. You can just take 3/4 off. I'd be then a little bit concerned that the bounce would be quite vicious back to the upside. So I probably would move the stops to break even, or I might close the whole trade altogether down there. Depends on what the price action is. But you've got to be aware that the driver for this is Paula speaking later on. This will move it. The retail sales from the United States, all that stuff will move it, but this could be a driver, because if this ends up being negative, then you could be in for a really lucrative trade if you've managed to stay in. So I'd want to leave something on the table, whether you choose it to be a third or a quarter or an eighth. Leave something on the table and just see if you can ride it a little bit. Not enough to bother you if it comes all the way back, but just enough to make the game of trading just that little bit easier, because you're in a trade that you can then just manage. But the key thing is not to get twitchy. Have a plan, whatever you choose to do. I'd write it down now as soon as you possibly can, whether it's take profit here or here, whether it's to take how much. Write it down now while you're a little bit more clear-minded and less emotive, and then follow it. Don't get twitchy. That would be really good practice for later trades. So don't take this trade in isolation. Look for it as a building block. Okay. Well, anyway, time to push off, because I've got to be back in 25 minutes with the boys, and we are going to do this again tomorrow at 2:30 Sing. So it's going to be slightly early because the UK market has changed. We've got daylight saving hours now. So let's come back in a little bit earlier. Thanks for that trade, by the way, Pedro. Appreciate that, buddy. Well worth looking at what other people are doing. And if I was trading currencies, I'd be in this with you. All right, mate. No problem at all. Have a good rest of the day, guys, and I will speak to you all tomorrow.